Hello, chess family. It's me, Nesta Master, Jesse James, and it's time for another installment of, well, how to play the London system. Here we're going to be taking a look at the idea with Queen B6 inducing black to go ahead and play pawn to C4, and how we're going to try and sidestep that idea. All right, here we go. We start with D4, D5, Bishop F4, London system has begun. Knight F6, Pawn to E3, Pawn to C5. Already here, you should already be expecting the Queen B6 ideas because they played it so fast over here. Pawn to C3, Knight to C6, Knight to D2, Queen to B6, and this is the move. We're going to go ahead and play Queen to B3 here. Again, we're trying to induce, or we want our opponent to play the pawn move to C4. Now, if this was reversed, I would say this is a very good. But here, because you're playing it as white, it's actually not so bad here. Here, I do want to say, what would you play here as white? Because I feel like a lot of people here are playing the wrong move. What do you play here as white? All right, I heard someone say, Queen takes on B6, give him these double pawns. At this point, black is actually better now. How is that possible? Well, here black has the simple idea of trying to play pawn to B4 here, and actually it's really hard to stop, especially if you're not playing with knowing this idea. For instance, if you just play something like knight to F3, black is much better. Pawn to B5, and then here most people will see the idea and play pawn A3, and here they will get a little bit embarrassed after just playing pawn to B4 here. And now you realize, well, it's just in a pin, and this is going to be very bad for you. Here, I already take black's position. With that being said, well, then why would I go ahead and recommend that you take on B6? I don't. I recommend that you go ahead and play Queen to C2. Here we induce C4 to get played, so we can attack this pawn chain with either ideas like pawn to B3 or pawn to E4, as we'll see in the game. And, well, white actually holds the advantage here after black does play pawn c4. It would seem like this is a good idea, but from my experience, this queen kind of is in the way, just like in sometimes you see in Sicilians. These pawns want to be pushed forward, so the queen has to move away to another square. And also, well, again, like I said, white just has really good ideas with attacking this pawn chain. Let's see what happened in this game. All right, here we go. Knight to h5 got played, trying to grab the bishop pair. No need to lose it. Bishop to g5 gets played. Pawn to h6, bishop to h4, pawn g5. One of those moves that, well, yes, you can go ahead and win my bishop, but you have to mess up your pawn structure before you do that. And here a nice in-between move. This is actually a really nice game with Carlsen versus So, which I'll cite in here, and I'll probably put it inside the box below. Here, bishop to e2, and now, well, you can go ahead and grab this bishop, but you're going to have to mess up your pawn structure. So here, black went ahead and played knight to g7, bishop to g3, and knight to f5. Yes, you're going to win this bishop now, but look how many moves it took you to do it. So here, white is already at a +1 advantage here. And as you can see, the pawn structure is messed up here. Now, you can, of course, play the pawn to e4 right away here, but I like the way that white played here. Knight g to f3. Now all of white's pieces are developed as far as the minors, and here e4 will be coming pretty soon. All right, bishop to g7. No need to take on g3 right away since the bishop is trapped. Now here we go. Pawn to e4. Like I said, b3, e4. This is where you're supposed to break. And here e4 is perfectly on time, breaking up this pawn structure. And here knight takes on g3, h takes on g3, and pawn to e6. I can tell you, as playing this from the black side or playing it from the white side, this pawn structure is very weak, and I would definitely take this as white any day of the week. I'll point out real quick that, well, if you do take on e4 here, you have the knight takes on c4, nice in-between move, attacking the queen, and you'll be winning the e4 pawn back right away. So here, black went ahead and took on g3, h takes on g3, very much a staple move when you're playing these London system. Let's open up this rook. And here, pawn to e6, again, taking on e4 just ruins your pawn structure. You're going to be losing a pawn after knight takes on c4. So e6 got played. And here, well, white played knight to h2, a very nice but weird-looking move. What's the idea here? Well, this e5 square is a little bit weak, and we also might think about pushing a pawn to f4 here. Here we're going to see a very nice positional game here by white. Oof, here we go. Bishop to d7 gets played, just trying to develop the piece. Bishop to h5, a nice idea of putting pressure on f7. Black might have thought about castling queenside, but now f7 needs to be protected. Okay, knight to e7 got played. Castle's kingside here. Here, white has just nothing bad about their position. They will take on d5 in the future, but they want to do it at the right time. Castle's kingside over here. And here we go, pawn to e5, and this is the kind of pawn structure that you want. It's pointing right toward the kingside, and, well, the kingside attack is going to happen at some point. Here, well, black could just not stand it, so he went ahead and played pawn f5, and this just leads to a long-term weakness that eventually loses the game. Here, what do you play? hopefully you're not thinking too much here. We en passant, and after rook takes f6, here we just have a very good position. What's so bad about this position? Well, hopefully you notice the pawn weakness of a backwards. This one right here, the backwards pawn on e6. So very simple. We're going to control this square on e5 because the pawn can't be moved forward if you control that. It's a backwards pawn. It can't be moved forward without being captured. And then, of course, well, we're just going to win this pawn. Let's see how skillfully this happens. Knight g4, nice tempo off the rook. And, of course, removing one of the defenders and heading toward the e5 square. Beautiful, beautiful move right here. Also, I'll point out, man, look at this long diagonal right here. It's the slide squares are just so weak. White would have an idea if the bishop was a little bit closer, maybe to put the bishop to b1 over here, and really there's no good way to stop the light square weaknesses from being attacked. But here, like I said, because this is a backwards pawn open file here, this is where we're going to put our pressure to. If we need to, we might bring the bishop back, but I don't think that'll be necessary. Rook to f5, and let's just get moving forward. Knight to f3. e5 has been conquered here. Queen to d6, again saying maybe I could play e5. Of course not. Rook f2 e1. Now we're going to do the standard idea. We're going to double up the rooks here and put ultimate pressure on e6. Bishop to e8, making a trade. That's okay with me. These light squares are weak, and well, if you get rid of your light square bishop, this is perfect. Also, this bishop was one of the best defenders for the e6 pawn, so why not? Bishop takes rook over to e2, knight to c6, and rook a to e1. Again, this is all about the weakness over here on e5 and e6, a weak square is usually a weak pawn next to it. And rook to e7 gets played. Here, I mean, black really just has no good moves. He can just really kind of move back and forth here and just kind of wait for the demise that will assuredly happen. Rook e7 is also a nice move, just in case you were thinking, maybe we can go queen takes f5 and then rook takes on e8. Get those two rooks versus the queen. I wouldn't be surprised if that's just another easily winning variation. So rook e7 gets played. And here, well, a nice tactic. It's white to move. Can you break through black's position right here? All right, hopefully you push pause, so we try to figure it out. We mentioned that e6 is the weakness, and well, that is how we break through. Here, we notice that the queen was putting pressure on the rook, but the pawn was protecting, so simple chess, what do? Remove the defender. Rook takes on e6 here, and the rook takes back. And here, well, queen takes on f5, rook takes, knight takes. Now we're just up an extra pawn, good weak squares, and a d5 is a weak square over here. Here, very nice technique by our opponent. Here we go. Knight to e7, queen to f3, queen to g6, looking to maybe come in to the back row and cause some disturbance. No worries. King to f1, let's just overprotect this square. Pawn to b5. Here the queen will be penetrating at some point, but trying to bring her down over here is probably a little too fast. Here white would simply just go knight to e3, because if you do take on b2, here you come with a tempo knight takes d5. And while you're attacking the knight can't really take back without queen takes check. King goes somewhere, and then queen takes c4, and oof, this is a bad bishop, and now you have a passed pawn running forward. So here black went ahead and just played pawn to b5. Knight to e3, d5 is still a weak square. Queen to e6 to defend. Pawn to a3, getting ready for this a5, b4 push. a3 is definitely a prophylactic move. Pawn to a5. Pawn to g4. I love this kind of move. Again, we're playing against this bishop just as much as we're playing against the pawns. g4 makes sure that there's no kingside expansion here, and even says, you know what, this f5 square might be nice for me. Later on, you might see this knight try to get to g3 and f5 in the future. All right, b4 gets played because, well, what else? In this position, it is pretty much just already very bad. And, well, black is trying to put pressure on this d4 pawn. So after 8 takes, if you do take on b4, well, black's a bit happy here and plays bishop takes d4. Also, the game has turned around, right? Now maybe we have a passed pawn being pushed here, and the bishop's actually opened up to attack. So simple chess here. We do not take. We always try to get our pieces better. Knight to c2. Here a nice move, not only putting pressure on the b4 pawn, but also b4 square to put pressure on the d5 pawn. And when you start counting the pieces, it's like, oh no, there's 1, 2, 3 attackers for the d5 pawn, and only 1, 2 that can defend. Unfortunately for them, this bishop is a dud. All right, here we go. Pawn to b3 got played. Knight to b4, not a big surprise here. And here black, again, just in a losing position, just tries to go for it. Bishop takes on d4. A decent try in this kind of position, just trying to make complications when you're in a worse position. Well, if we don't take back, we're just losing. So c takes on d4. Pawn to c3, the idea, maybe we can get these pawns pushed. B takes c3, show me, right? Pawn to b2. And here, just simple chess, queen to d1 here, blocking the pawn. And black has one final try here. He goes queen to e4, saying, hey, I want to make the queen right here. Can you stop me? And well, there's a few ways to stop him. So white just goes ahead and plays knight to d3. And at this point, well, black just resigns as he's just down a piece. This pawn is blocked and knight takes b2 is being threatened. If you do try to make a queen here, we'll just play queen takes b1. And well, we'll just be in a better position. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Remember, this was the idea to try to induce c4 here for your opponent. And remember, whenever they do this, do not trade queens. Bring back the queen to c2. I know it may feel like, well, black is better here because he got this move in. And, you know, there's even ideas about bishop f5 in some of these lines, which I'll have to go over at another time. But here, queen c2, white is still in a better position because e4 and b3 breaks against this pawn structure. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you in the next one.